Having a partner actively lie to you over and over is frustrating, confusing, and most of all hurtful, and it can feel like a huge betrayal. And there are a lot of videos on social media talking about gaslighting, someone maliciously lying to you to get you to believe something that isn't true. And after watching these videos, it's totally normal to feel scared that someone who you trusted is actively against you. So in this video, I'm going to break down the misconceptions of gaslighting, what is really going on with your partner, and what you can actually do about it. So for those of you who don't know, gaslighting is a form of manipulation in which someone attempts to sow self-doubt and confusion in another person's mind. Typically, gaslighters are seeking to gain power and control over the other person. So gaslighting is pre-planned lying to make a person question their own sanity. And, like I said, there's tons of videos out there talking about gaslighting. So we can start to recognize patterns of lying in our partner. Firstly, lies about unimportant things, small things, but gradually becoming bigger and lying about more and more important things. And then when we approach them about it, they can get defensive and start to tell outright lies about what has happened, what they did, what they didn't do. And the outcome of all of this is that we end up labeling them as a gaslighter. We see them as a gaslighter. And then when we catch them lying, we discover that they are a gaslighter to us. So that's it, right? Case closed. Just leave their lying ass. Well, it's not actually as simple as that. In fact, the problem isn't them. The problem isn't you. The problem comes from our own brains. The truth is that what we feel like is gaslighting is often far, far from it. And in fact, it's just a simple human trait that every single person on this planet does to varying degrees. And just before I jump on to the next point, if you do want more videos on relationships, then feel free to subscribe to the channel for new videos on relationships every single week. So there's a difference between gaslighting and emotional recall. So when a relationship is going through a rough patch and there are discords in a relationship, places where you and your partner aren't necessarily seeing eye to eye, we can start to notice a pattern of things that are simply not happening. So for example, let's say your partner tells you that you raised your voice at them when you know deep down that you didn't. Or maybe they tell you that you bullied them into agreeing to doing something that they didn't want to do. Or maybe they tell you for the past few years, you're the one that's been gaslighting them. And when we hear these things, it can really feel like this is exactly the textbook signs of gaslighting that we've heard about, right? They're putting all of their problems onto me in order to deflect from their problems. They're gaslighting me. Well, the truth is that our human memory and our perception is massively flawed. Our brains are really terrible at remembering actual logical facts. 99% of the time, they are remembering feelings, and those feelings taint all of these logical memories. So there's 4 things that influence our perception of all events. So there's the emotional impact. We tend to remember how we feel about an event rather than the event itself. Emotions act as a filter. They emphasize some details while downplaying others. So there's a 2006 study that found emotional memories tend to be vivid, but not necessarily accurate. So people remember the emotional gist of an event rather than the actual specific details. For example, if we feel hurt in a moment, then our memory will be painted with that hurt, even if it's not factually accurate. Then there's the impact of time. A person's recall of an event can become less accurate due to the impact of time. Over time, our memories can warp and change the further we get from the event itself. Then there's the impact of subsequent information. So human memory isn't like a video recorder. It's reconstructive, meaning that we piece together memories based on our emotions, our beliefs, and subsequent information. This process can lead to a lot of distorted memories. So the psychologist Elizabeth Loftus has studied extensively how memories can be altered, and her research shows that memories can be influenced by suggestive questioning and misinformation. There's a 1974 study that showed that the wording of questions could change participants' memory of a car accident, including words like smashed in the question led to a higher speed estimate of a car accident, and false memories of broken glass, when factually that did not happen. So things like our friend's perspective, finding gaslighting videos online that tell us that we are a victim of gaslighting. We often try to absorb information that confirms our own beliefs, our own existing emotion, and validates our feelings at that moment. And that information can reinforce the idea that we are being gaslit. And there's the impact of expectation. So if you are expecting to be gaslit, you might interpret innocent discrepancies as malicious manipulation. This is called expectancy bias. And this is basically where we create a self-fulfilling prophecy, where our expectations influence our perceptions and our behaviors, making the expected outcome more likely. So for example, if we are expecting to be gaslit, then we will perform actions that will actually encourage gaslighting. So all of this means that yes, our brains are susceptible to gaslighting. Our memories can be manipulated, but it also means that our brains are completely capable of gaslighting ourselves, of changing factual information and painting it with evidence that we have looked for ourselves in order to reinforce our feelings, but also our emotional memories as well. So all of this leads to very inaccurate memories. So what's an example of this? Let's say your partner said to you, hey, you seem upset. But when they said it, you'd had a rough day at work. Your partner had not done the things that they'd agreed to do. And for the past few days, you both had had shouting matches. You hear your partner say, you seem upset. You walk out exhausted by yet another unproductive conversation. And then you start to think of all the times in the past when they've said to you that you're an angry person. And it sucks to be painted as the bad guy. So you tell your friends about it and they validate your exhaustion. You're still in a situation where work still sucks. There's a lot of things going on. And after a few days of ruminating on that feeling from that moment, this memory will be created mostly of your feelings that you felt. Now, let's say from the other side, your partner has also thought about that moment when they said to you, hey, you seem upset. From their perception, they were coming from a place of trying to come to a solution and they feel rejected in that moment. So when you walk out in the context of all the days before, they ruminate on the emotion that they feel. So they think to themselves, wow, here I am trying to come up with a solution. Now my partner is just rejecting the idea. And, in their minds, they maybe replay the moment as them saying gently, humbly, softly, hey, honey, hope you're doing okay. Just wanted to check in with you. I know things have been rough lately, but I'm here for you if you need anything. So their memory of it is created by all of these negative feelings about you walking out and you rejecting them, but negative feelings in a different way. And they start to feel more upset because to them, they've tried to be softer and it still doesn't work. Now, after all of this, let's say you try to approach the situation. You say, hey, I'm not going to stand for you always telling me that I'm angry when you're the one provoking me all the time. Your partner says, I didn't call you angry. I came to you at like a 2. I was super calm and you just slammed the door and stormed out. So both people have had their memories impacted by their own emotion, time, subsequent information, and expectation. Both of their realities are 100% real because they are emotionally real. Their feelings are 100% valid. But in trying to tell their feelings to the other person, they are telling their reality, which the other person does not accept, does not feel is real. So they're interpreting it as this person is trying to tell me that I did something that I didn't do. And in this situation, often people will say, yeah, but one person needs to be right. You can't just let someone falsely believe that they have their facts straight when it's simply not true. And this is what we call falling for the paradox of control. So the paradox of control is where you try to control something outside of yourself. So when you fall for the paradox of control, you do things like trying to change your partner's mind, trying to tell them that they're wrong about a situation, trying to make them feel bad for having the feelings that they're having. When you try to take control of this moment, you ironically have less control over the situation. So if you jump in and invalidate their emotional reality, then you're simply reinforcing to them that, you did storm out and slam the door, that you are angry, that the way they feel is completely justified, and maybe you can't be trusted. So what can we do about this? Well, before we jump in on what to do, there is obviously only so much I can dive into in a YouTube video. So if you do want a deeper dive, then join me on my free relationship bootcamp, where you'll learn the steps to diffuse toxic behavior like gaslighting and build yourself a thriving relationship from the ground up. If you click on the link in the description, you can take your spot today. First, don't focus on the facts. Focus on the emotions. Arguing over facts leads to endless debates, as you probably experience, since every single person has a different recollection of events. You're focusing on past events. This results in frustration and nothing ever getting resolved because you're arguing over two different perceptions, which are both 100% valid. Instead, focus on understanding and acknowledging each other's feelings. By creating this emotional safety, you help your partner feel heard and understood, and this diffuses the tension and fosters the connection. But don't stop there. It's important to address the root cause of the feelings. So instead of rehashing details of what happened, dive into the underlying emotions that are driving that conflict. Ask more open-ended questions. Try to understand your partner's perspective. And then once all that's said and done, then you can share your own feelings honestly. This helps you to develop a lot deeper insights into each other's needs, concerns, and it paves the way for meaningful solutions that are future-focused rather than focused on the past. But during all of this, it's important to develop long-term thinking. So it's important to recognize that resolving complex emotional discords takes time, and it takes many multiple conversations. So commit to an ongoing dialogue and be patient with this whole process. The more that you focus on the long-term health of your relationship, this helps you to build that emotional safety and help your partner feel more secure and willing to invest in finding solutions rather than focusing and dwelling on the past. And to develop this long-term focus, it's important to avoid the paradox of control. The paradox of control is when you're trying to change your partner's mind or feelings directly, through persuading them or invalidating them. This always backfires. It damages this emotional safety and it reinforces all of these negative perceptions that your partner has of you. So instead, focus on managing your own reactions, creating a supportive environment where your relationship can, and eventually you both can talk about your feelings. And it's really crucial when you're talking about facts to bring in that logic, those facts later on. So during heated moments, emotional responses will always dominate. So when you try to bring in logic, these logical arguments are completely ineffective and actually damages emotional safety in the process. Allow times for the emotions to settle down before discussing practical solutions. So rather than dwelling over details of what did or didn't happen, it's important to look forward for potential solutions to avoid that happening again. One of these suggestions could be, hey, maybe in the future I should ask how you're feeling rather than saying you seem upset. Maybe that could be one solution. This way you can deal with the emotional side of things first, and then once the emotions have settled down, you can start to revisit the issue with a clearer perspective and work together on logical, future-focused solutions. And it's important to create a win-win mindset. So approaching conflicts with the goal of finding solutions that benefit both people. This is a collaboration between you both, right? Where you foster mutual respect and cooperation. And it pushes your brain to seek creative solutions that address both partners' needs and wants and values, right? It strengthens the relationship over time. Developing win-wins rather than win-lose compromises means that you're always building the relationship and moving it forward. This takes the long-term mindset. But all of this is useless unless you're able to cultivate and lead the relationship and conversations in the right way. It is very easy to fall into the paradox of control. When you're trying to lead the relationship in the right direction, it can come across as controlling. So if you want a deeper dive into how to lead a relationship without falling into the paradox of control, then I will leave you with this video right here. I'll see you over there.